ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः. And we'll also chant the verse since we are discussing the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. The verse which Master Mahasaya, one who recorded the Gospel, he used to describe this book. That is a verse from the Bhagavata Purana, and it goes like this. Tava kathamritam tapta jivanam kavibhiriditam kalmashapaham Shravanamangalam Shrimadatam Bhuvi Grinanti Ye Bhurida Janaha. So the meaning is Tava Katha Amritam, the nectar of your words, Tapta Jivanam, revives the scorched spirit of human beings, Kavibhi Iditam, and Kalmashapaham. Kalmashapam means they purify the sinner. Kavibhi Iriditam means they are praised by the holy people. Shravana Mangalam, to hear your words is itself auspicious. Shrimad Atatam, it is also peace generating. Bhuvi Grinanti Ye Bhurida Jana, they are the real givers who spread your name and message far and wide. So this is how the recorder of the Gospel, Mahendranath Gupta, he describes what he has recorded, the words of Sri Ramakrishna. So I think all of you have read this book, or maybe not the whole thing, but certainly you have read at least a little of the book. So today we will be discussing in a short way about the author of this book, that is Mahendranath Gupta, and some facts about the original book, that is in Bengali, that is Kathamrita, and its English translation, which is the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. And we will also see what Holy Mother and Swami Vivekananda said about this book, and we will discuss what it contains, its teachings, its uniqueness. So I think all of us know that the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna contains the conversations of Sri Ramakrishna with his disciples, devotees, and other visitors who used to come to him, and they were recorded by one of his household disciples, Mahendranath Gupta. He recorded the book under the pseudonym of M. He just says that one who recorded is M. He does not mention his full name. So in Bengali, they fill 5 volumes. Maybe you have seen that green colored small volumes are there. So those are in original Bengali Kathamrita, but those are not in chronological order. So when it was translated as the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, then Swami Nityatmananda made it in a chronological way. So the first of the 5 volumes in Bengali was published in 1897. So when Swami Vivekananda was still there, 1897, and the last of the 5 volumes was published just before M's death. that is in 1932. So it took a long time to publish the Bengali volumes. So naturally, any discussion about the gospel will be incomplete without a discussion about the recorder of this gospel, that is Mahendranath Gupta, or Master Masha as he is called, or M. So who was he? He was one of the very intimate disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. So I will just, of course you have all seen the photo, but still I will just share it. Here also, for those who are sitting here, this is the recorder of the gospel, Mahendranath Gupta, and he was one of the intimate disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. So we all know that in the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna says that God comes to this world whenever religion declines and irreligion prevails. So God comes, yes, but he does not come alone, because the work he has to do is such a significant one, such a great one, that he brings his whole team as if. So there are special people who come with him, who help him in his divine mission. So these people act in different roles in his divine play. So M, or Master Mahashaya, was a great soul, and it seems that he was born for this very purpose. What? To record the life and message of one who is considered the incarnation of this age. And at first sight itself, Sri Ramakrishna had recognized M for who M was, for who he was. And the comments he made about M at different times indicate that he knew that M was not an ordinary person. Once Sri Ramakrishna says to M, I recognized you on hearing you read the Chaitanya Bhagavata. Chaitanya Bhagavata is about the life of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is also considered to be an incarnation of God. So Sri Ramakrishna says to him, I recognized you on hearing you read the Chaitanya Bhagavata. You are my own. The same substance, like father and son. So this close he was. Sri Ramakrishna says the same substance, like father and son. Before you came here, you did not know who you were. Now you will know. So these significant words Sri Ramakrishna had said about M. So we can understand that he was a very special person born with a very special mission. And needless to say, he was present during all the conversations recorded in the main body of the book, because he recorded them. And whatever he used to hear, he used to write down in his diary. Not in longhand, just a few points. So the conversations that have been recorded, they have the value of almost stenographic records. They are absolutely accurate. Each word, what has been recorded, has been uttered by Sri Ramakrishna himself. There is absolutely no doubt about that. So that Master Mahashaya was born to record Sri Ramakrishna's words and transmit them to posterity is also evident from what once Swami Shivananda, a disciple of the Master, what he said on one occasion. So I quote Swami Shivananda, he said, whenever there was an interesting talk, suppose the disciples were talking in Dakshineshwar with the master. So whenever there was some important something, Sri Ramakrishna would call Master Mahasaya if he was not in the room. He would call him and draw his attention to what he had spoken. So we did not know then why the master did so. Now we can realize that this action of the master had an important significance, for it was reserved for Master Mahasaya to give to the world at large the sayings of the master. Sri Ramakrishna knew this. So whenever there was something important, if Master Mahasaya was not there in the room at that time, the master would call him and tell him what he had said. So this was a training, and the master knew that what M would give to the world later. So M was not only, he was not the only recorder of Sri Ramakrishna's teachings. This we should know. Even Ramchandra Datta had recorded the master's teachings. Ramchandra Datta was another householder disciple, one who took Swamiji to Sri Ramakrishna. And there is a very small book by Swami Brahmananda himself, written by Swami Brahmananda, Teachings of the Master. So others have also recorded, but none of them is so detailed, so exhaustive like the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna by M. So we owe a great deal to Master Mahasaya. Because thanks to him, we get, unlike in the case of the great teachers of the past, no other teacher, no other incarnation has his teachings have been recorded in such a detailed and exhaustive way, and especially with absolutely no doubt as to their authenticity. This is the biggest thing, no? Like Buddha's teachings also are there, many teachings are there, but there is a great deal of doubt because they were recorded many years after Buddha had passed away. So this is a unique thing of the gospel, that absolutely accurate and absolutely no doubt to its authenticity. So, and another thing is that the teachings of Buddha, like suppose teachings of Buddha are there, but such a faithful record of the date, time, exact report of the conversation, descriptions of concerned men and places, and references to contemporary events and personalities, and 100 other details are there in the gospel. Like from the gospel, we know so much about Keshav Chandra Sen, Brahma Samaj, when those conversations were there with Sri Ramakrishna. So these were recorded during the last 4 years of the master's life, 1882 to 1886. So that no one can doubt the historicity of Sri Ramakrishna himself and his teachings also at any future time. They are absolutely sealed, as if to say, with approval, thanks to the gospel. So, needless to say, Master Mahasaya was a very special person, born to fulfill a very special mission. And about him, Swami Nikhilananda ji, he translated the whole of Kathamrita. Just a few omissions are there, some few details in the beginning, but the whole thing has been translated, and such a thick book, you must have seen it. It's not a joke to translate that book. So Swami Nikhilananda in his introduction says about Master Mahasaya while many educated people heard Sri Ramakrishna's talks, it was given to this illustrious personage alone to leave a graphic and exact account of them for posterity, with details like date, hour, place, names, and particulars about those who were present. Humanity owes this great book to the ingrained habit of diary keeping with which M was endowed. So M means Master Masha, he had a habit of writing a diary. And this habit was very, very useful in his producing the gospel. So we will see some pages from the diary also and some photos of the diary also. So, and in addition to this habit of diary keeping, M had other great endowments which contributed to his success in writing this great work. So Swami Nityatmananda, he was a Swami who lived with M for many years, very close association. And he has, like M recorded the conversations of the master, he recorded the conversations of M. So those are also in many volumes. And in English they are titled M the Apostle and Evangelist. I think in Bengali they are Master Mahashaya Sannidhya or something like that. I'm not exactly sure. So many volumes. So he said about Master Mahashaya, M's prodigious memory combined with his extraordinary power of imagination completely annihilated the distance of time and place for him. Even after the lapse of half a century, he could always visualize scenes from the life of Sri Ramakrishna vividly. Superb too was his power to portray pictures by words. Through words, he could portray pictures. Means when we read the gospel, as if the whole thing is reproduced like a picture before our eyes. For example, the Kali temple of Dakshineshwar, in the beginning of the gospel, there is a absolutely fantastic description. So much detail, unbelievable. So even those who have not gone to the Kali temple, those who have just seen the photographs, the whole temple, as it were, arises before their eyes. So this wonderful capacity to make us visualize through words, that was in M. And that is why he could such a big work he could do. And Aldous Huxley, he has written a foreword to the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna in English. So he says, M, as the recorder modestly styles himself, was peculiarly qualified for his task. To a reverent love for his master, to a deep and experiential knowledge of the master's teaching, he added a prodigious memory for the small happenings of each day and a happy gift for recording them in an interesting and realistic way. Making good use of his natural gifts and of the circumstances in which he found himself, M produced a book unique in the literature of hagiography. No other saint has had so able and indefatigable a Boswell. So Boswell was a Scottish biographer, diarist and lawyer. So Boswell is best known for his biography of his friend and older contemporary of the the English writer Samuel Johnson, which is commonly said to be the greatest biography written in English language. Boswell's biography of Samuel Johnson. So, uh, Aldous Huxley says that as Boswell was to Johnson, similarly, Master Masha was to Sri Ramakrishna. And then he says about the uniqueness of the gospel, Mr. Huxley says, never have the small events of a contemplative's daily life been described with such a wealth of intimate detail. Never have the casual and unstudied utterances of a great religious teacher been set down with so minute a fidelity, with so much attention to detail. What was the environment? What was even the weather? How the master was sitting? Who else was present? Every detail, so much detail that enables us to visualize the whole scene. So, to read through these conversations in which mystical doctrine alternates with an unfamiliar kind of humor, and where discussions of the oddest aspects of Hindu mythology give place to the most profound and subtle utterances about the nature of ultimate reality, is in itself a liberal education in humility, tolerance, and suspense of judgment. These are the words of Mr. Huxley. And about him, Christopher Isherwood has also written a wonderful book about the master, Sri Ramakrishna and his disciples. So he says about M that his firm belief in the divinity of Ramakrishna's nature was just what stopped him from presenting his master as the glorified figure of a holy man. Anything that Ramakrishna says or does is sacred to him. Therefore, he omits nothing, alters nothing. That is the biggest thing. In his pages, we encounter Ramakrishna as an authentic spiritual phenomenon, by turns godlike and childlike, both sublime and absurd, now expounding the highest philosophy, now telling funny animal stories as parables, now singing and dancing, now staggering in ecstasy like a drunkard, now admonishing his devotees with the mature wisdom of father, and now simply roaming about just like a small child. So all these various moods of the master, M has captured in a absolutely unbelievable way. So this is about Master Masha. Of course, there are many other details we can discuss when we discuss the life of Master Masha. So in short, his connection to the gospel we have seen. And now about the uniqueness of this gospel. We have already discussed it to some extent. So about this, Swami Nityatmananda, again we will quote. He says, what are these? What is the significance of the gospel? These are the utterances of a man of our own times. It was not that Sri Ramakrishna was there thousands of years ago and just we have a hazy picture of him. No. So even some years ago, people who had actually seen the master were still alive. And we have, people like me have also seen disciples of Holy Mother, those who have seen Holy Mother. So these are the utterances of a man of our own times who is described by Romain Rolland, he was a French writer, as the consummation of 2000 years of the spiritual life of 300 million Hindus. Of course, there are now many more Hindus. For the first time in the world's history, for the first time, mind you, the words of a prophet who is reverenced in India as belonging in the spiritual line of Krishna and Buddha, and who is recognized in the West as a compeer of Christ, have been presented with almost stenographic accuracy. Not a word here and there. In their breadth and depth, they are unique. Great spiritual truths are here described in simple words and vivid stories. The problems of a personal God and impersonal reality, the conflicts of religions and of religious disciplines are here solved in the light of direct experience. In these pages, seekers of all religions will find courage and faith, hope and illumination. The Gospel of the Master is the silent force animating the national life of India. It is the precursor of a new age of light and understanding for the whole world. So, other things are also said. I have left out some of these. So, these are what this great Swami of ours have said about Master Mahasaya as well as the Gospel. So now, as we have already seen, M has not only recorded the words of the Master, but he has also presented in every chapter the place and the circumstances under which Sri Ramakrishna spoke. This is the unique thing. Like in Buddha's teachings, we have Buddha's teachings, but we can never imagine where was Buddha sitting. In a monastery, outside, who were with him? Even what was he wearing, for example? What did he look like at that time? So everything is here in the Gospel. So we have already seen that M's habit of diary keeping helped him a great deal in this great and voluminous work. So this also is fantastic. I mean, it is impossible to imagine also how M recorded these Gospels. So it's quite a mystery in this also. So what happened was M used to record the words of the Master very briefly in his diary. How briefly I will just show you the pages of the diary. This has been taken from Swami Nityatmananda's book about Master Mahasaya. So I'll just show you the pages so you will just understand how briefly he wrote. I mean, it's unbelievable. Yeah. So you are seeing here one photo for those who are present here. Welcome. Please sit down. So here you can see just a few lines. Just a few lines. So there are many photos in Swami Nityatmananda's book. I have just taken a few. So here you can see another page. See, this Chaturtha Darshan fourth meeting. Chaturtha Darshan means fourth meeting. Just see how briefly the points are there. Just see Dvitiya Darshan, you can see on the left side, those who can read Bengali, Dvitiya Darshan, it is written. Means second meeting with the master. So just see it, it is not even one column, just a few points. Huh? And from this, he produced the gospel. So what was how did he do it? It is absolutely unbelievable. So we can see that the recordings are so brief that it has no meaning to anybody else. If we read it, we can't make out anything. He wrote just a few words. But from these notes, before he started writing the gospel in the longhand form, he used to meditate on the scene of the day with the help of these few lines. And he would say later that while meditating, the total scene of each day under consideration would appear clearly before his eyes. It is just like as if some recorder is there in the brain. The whole thing he records. My unbelievable memory. We cannot even imagine. Like Swami Vivekananda and others had. So there is I will tell you an incident which is recorded in the life of Sri Shankaracharya. So this incident is so miraculous that nobody would have believed it. Once what happened that a disciple of Shankaracharya wrote about his philosophy, teaching about his gurus, Shankaracharya's philosophy. So he was traveling once. He had that book with him, which he had written. So when he had written, he had dictated the whole thing to Shankaracharya for his approval. That is it okay? Shankaracharya said, yeah, it is okay. So then he went on a tour with the book. While on a tour, he at night once he rested at some person's place. Now that person was very, very against this Advaita philosophy. So it is said that when he knew that the person who is in his house is Shankaracharya's disciple and he has this book with him also, in the course of conversation he may have mentioned, he at night while he was sleeping, he burned that book so that it could not be read by anybody else. So poor disciple, what to do? Finished, it is gone. So he came back to his guru, Shankaracharya. He said, Master, the whole thing has gone. What I had uttered before you, that whole thing. Shankaracharya said, yes, but you had told me the whole thing. You had read out the whole thing to me. I will again tell you the whole thing. Everything is in my memory. So it is said that Shankaracharya from beginning to end, he read out the whole thing to him again, what he had heard only once. So it is unimaginable. It will just seem like a story. Who will believe? But when we see this kind of thing in front of our eyes, what Master Masha, and of course Swami Vivekananda is always there. So many incidents are there. He had practically memorized the whole of Encyclopedia Britannica. There is an incident in Swamiji's life. We will see that later. So just from the few words he jotted, and you have seen the pages of the diary, during meditation, the whole thing would appear before him. And he would start writing when the entire scene would clearly surface in his mind. That is the power of meditation. So that is why we find that there is some speciality in each word of the gospel. It is not just a collection of masters' teachings arranged in order and placed before the public. M has presented before us a total picture of each day as it was then. He mentions everything. Where the master is seated in which direction he sits, who else is in the room, everything. And in the beginning, those who have read, he narrates the detail of the Kali temple. So from the very beginning, the reader of the gospel can integrate the picture given here with their thoughts about the master. That is the main thing. The whole thing becomes integrated with the personality of Sri Ramakrishna. This is the unique feature of the gospel. See, there are also books on teachings of Sri Ramakrishna. Like Advaita Ashram has published a book, like each topic, what Sri Ramakrishna has said. Suppose what Sri Ramakrishna has said about God. So it is just given in point form. Point number one, God can be realized if one cries for him. Point number two, God cannot be realized without enunciation, etc. So you just read the teachings. But they don't bring us close to the master. But when we read the gospel, it seems that the master is sitting right before us. He's sitting right before us on his cot in Dakshineshwar. We can see people sitting at his feet. Maybe Swami Vivekananda, Swami Brahmananda, all these people. So this is one of the unique features of the gospel which has not been done with the teachings of any other incarnation of God. So M recorded the words in saying of the master and recapitulated them so exactly in meditation that it was as if the master was speaking to him right then. Because his idea was that those who would hear or read these words later could feel in their meditation that the scene was right before them and that they were hearing the words from Sri Ramakrishna himself. So this is the great benefit of reading the gospel. So if this method is followed when we read the gospel with such an attitude, try to imagine that Sri Ramakrishna is there sitting before us and everything which will help us to have this imagination is there. So if this method is followed, the words of the master will be connected with his personality. As one of our President Swamis had said, they will reach us as glowing words influenced by Sri Ramakrishna's radiant personality. Each and every word will be living and vibrant, not abstract or impersonal. Rather, we shall feel that the Master himself is speaking, and he is speaking to ordinary people like us. So if we discuss the gospel keeping such a picture before us and thinking about the Master, we shall draw immense benefit from this study. It will just be like meditation. That is why Master Mashai wrote it in this unique way. He has presented the teachings before us as subjects for meditation, as they were to him. In his later life also, when Sri Ramakrishna had passed away, M used to treasure those diaries because they give him the lively touch of the master, as if the master was present there. Just he would read the points and enter into meditation, he would feel the presence of the master. So much so that actually once one of the diaries he lost in a tram car. So I will also show you a photo of the diaries. This is also from that same book. Many diaries were there. So here you can see the photos. These are the diaries. M's original diaries, they are still kept. So once what happened was M forgot, he was traveling in a tram car in Calcutta. He brought out the diary to read and he forgot the diary there. So he later got it back, but when he lost it, M said, "What terrible distress I have gone through when I lost that diary. It was worse than losing a son. I felt I should not live anymore. Otherwise, why had the master taken away his words from me?" And luckily he got back. He went to the place and all that. So lost and found, he got it. So when I got back my diary, I realized that this body would remain a few days more. Means I would be alive some more time. Otherwise, he would not have lived. Oh, how much fear and anxiety I went through for that diary. How sincerely I prayed to the Master for that. And what joy I felt when it came to my hand again. So we can imagine that what those diaries were to M. Nothing short of the living presence of the Master. So now a little about the publication of Kathamrita and its translation, the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Now during the Master's lifetime, when the Sri Ramakrishna was still there, M most probably did not reveal the contents of his diary to anyone. No one knew that this was being done. There is an unconfirmed tradition that when the master saw him taking notes, he expressed apprehension at the possibility of his utilizing these to publicize him. Like Keshav Chandra Sen, he wrote about Sri Ramakrishna everywhere. Sri Ramakrishna told him to stop. Sri Ramakrishna was much against all this being popular and all that. So Sri Ramakrishna, Master Masha must have thought that like Keshav, if I also publish it, then Master would not like it. So, since Sri Ramakrishna disliked being lionized like that, it must be for this reason that no one knew about this precious diary of M. For a decade, until he brought out selections from it as a pamphlet in English. First time in 1897. That was 11 years after the master had gone. And that also he did with Holy Mother's blessings and permission. He asked her permission that should I. So he had also read out portions of this gospel to Holy Mother. And he received the greatest compliment. The Holy Mother, being very much pleased to hear parts of the diary read to her in Bengali, wrote to Master Mahasaya, "When I heard the Kathamrita, I felt as if it was he." He means Sri Ramakrishna himself who was saying all that. So what greater stamp of approval we require? And the two pamphlets in English entitled The Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna appeared in October and November 1897. And they drew the spontaneous acclamation of Swami Vivekananda himself, who wrote on 24th November of that year from Dehradun to Master Mahasaya. Swamiji wrote after reading, "Many, many thanks for your second leaflet. It is indeed wonderful. The move is quite original, and never was the life of a great teacher brought before the public untarnished by the writer's mind as you are doing. You have not put anything of your own in that. It is all Sri Ramakrishna, through and through. The language also is beyond all praise, so fresh, so pointed, and withal so plain and easy. I cannot express in adequate terms how I have enjoyed them. I am really in a transport when I read them. Strange, isn't it? Our teacher and Lord was so original, and each one of us will have to be original or nothing. I now understand why none of us attempted his life before. It has been reserved for you, this great work. He is present with you, he is with you, evidently. And as a postscript, Swami Vivekananda says, Socratic dialogues are Plato all over. Means Plato, when he wrote the dialogues of Socrates, his teacher, it was more of his dialogues than Socrates. So that is what he says. Socratic dialogues are Plato all over. But in this, you are entirely hidden. Master Masha is nowhere to be found. Just M. That's all. So M had said, I recorded whatever I heard with my own ears from the Master's lips, and whatever I saw of his life with my own eyes. So though M remains hidden in the pages of the Gospel, but he is there in every scene in the background. So actually that is why in order to be unknown, Master Masha used his pen name M. That's all. Under which the book has been appearing till now. But such a great work, such a wonderful work cannot remain hidden for long. And nor can its author remain unrecognized by the public of the modern times. So M and his book came to be widely known very soon, and to meet the growing demand, a full-sized book, volume 1 of the Gospel, translated by M himself, was published in 1907 by the Brahmavadin office of Madras, that is Chennai. A second edition of it, revised by M, was brought out by the Ramakrishna Mutt, Madras in December 1911. And subsequently second part containing new chapters from the original Bengali was published by the same Mutt in 1922. But the full English translation, that is the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna by Nikhilanandji, what we have today, appeared first in 1942. So this is some wonderful facts about the Gospel, and just before ending we can just discuss what the Gospel contains. What is the subject matter? We all have an idea in brief. So what does it contain? The Gospel deals with God, nature of God, and how to realize Him, how to free ourselves from the bondage of this temporal world, from sufferings of this worldly life, and from ignorance, which makes us go round and round through births and deaths and births and deaths, and how to resolve all the doubts that create problems in our minds, and how to direct our mind towards God. That is the most important. How to direct our minds to God while living in the world and performing all our duties, and thus to attain profound peace. All these are discussed here. So we find all these in the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna. no matter what our personal inclination is towards knowledge or devotion or action or karma or jnana or bhakti, all of us shall receive from guidance from the this wonderful book, and we shall uh, derive great inspiration if we read with the proper attitude. So, in the beginning of the class, we had recited the verse which is from the Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam is a Purana that about the life and teachings of Shri Krishna. So, while introducing the Gospel, Master Masha quotes this verse from the Bhagavata. We have already chanted this verse, but in conclusion, we can just go through its meaning in a slightly detailed way. So, first is Tava Kathamritam. Kathamritam is a Sandhi, joint word made up of two words. Katha, your words or teachings, and Amrita. Amrita means, in the Puranas it is said that those who drink Amrita become immortal. In English it is translated as nectar or ambrosia or something like that. Nectar, but actually it means much more than nectar. So Tava Kathamritam means the Amrita or nectar of your words. Tapta Jivanam. Tapta means burnt. Our lives are being scorched in this worldly fire. Suffering. Nobody knows what will happen tomorrow. See what's happening in Ukraine. So much suffering. Hundreds and thousands of people. So we are being scorched in this world. And even if there is no such calamity which faces us, but still the three types of suffering which we have discussed, Adi Bhautika, Adhyatmika, Adi Daivika, those are always there with each jiva. So they revive the scorched spirit of human beings. Kalma Shapaham, they purify the sinner. Kavi Viriditam, they are the life of the holy. So, what is the nature of this Amrita? It is like water to a person who is being burnt by the miseries of this world. This Amrita removes all his suffering and he is saved from the cycle of births and deaths. So, Kavi bhi iditam. Kavi is one who is a holy person, and it is sometimes used as a knower of God also. Iditam means it is praised. So, Kavi is one who has attained knowledge. Such persons praise the gospel. They glorify the gospel, saying that it saves humanity from disaster and teaches us that a human being is not mortal. And what are the other features of the gospel? Kalmasha, it all removes all kinds of impurities. All impurities, all sins, all imperfections. Kalmashapaham. So we have put enough dirt on ourselves, all this worldly attachment, clinging to worldly things. How can we be free from this dirt? By following translating the teachings which has been mentioned in the gospel in our own life. So even Amrita has to be drunk to become immortal, but the gospel we just have to hear and follow the teachings. So we may think that, yeah, it is true that it is such a great thing, etc. But why don't we feel attraction towards the gospel? If we have felt that kind of attraction, that problems would have been solved. But we feel much more attracted to television than gospel. So why it is so? The reply is that for this attraction to develop, we have to be kavi. Kavi means we have to be pure. We have to be this next part of the gospel which it says, Bhuvi grinanti ye bhurida jana. So bhurida jana means one who have attained great merits due to good deeds. They bhuvi grinanti, they again and again like to drink this nectar. So only these people can develop a taste for this nectar. They love to praise, sing and discuss about God. The same thing has been said in the Bhagavad Gita also. That those whose sins have been wiped out to a great extent, they love to talk about me. Kathayanti ramanti cha. Kathayanti means they talk about me and in that they find great joy. So this can be attributed to the accumulated deeds of previous birth. And if a person has accumulated merit from previous births, he or she develops a taste for these kinds of scriptures from childhood itself. But even if we don't have so much merit, we can develop it by our own efforts. It is not something which cannot be done. So there are persons at various stages of development, but the gospel will be beneficial for all. And it is not that it's study, we have to be great scholars or great pandits, nothing of that kind. No memorizing big shlokas in Sanskrit or Latin or anything. Very simple. The language, even in Bengali, is extremely simple. In all its translations, Hindi, etc., everything. And English, of course, you have read, most of you, so you know that how simple it is. You don't need any big degrees or PhD degrees or big philosophy to understand, read and understand and follow the gospel. So, in order to make it clear why he named the book Sri Ramakrishna Kathamrita, M quoted these words from the Bhagavata at the beginning of the book. So it is from the life and teachings of Sri Krishna. So he who came to the earth as Sri Krishna and Ramachandra, again, the essence of whose teachings we find in the Gita and the Bhagavata and the Ramayana, it was he only who once again appeared as Sri Ramakrishna and delivered the gospel using language that can be understood by one and all. So maybe this was the message Master Mahashaya wanted to convey when he introduced the gospel by quoting this verse from the Bhagavata. So this is in short many more things I had thought of discussing, but we can since we have already exceeded our time, we can just end here for today. Then we can have a short hymn on Shivratri is coming. So on Lord Shiva we can have a short Sanskrit hymn. So let's end here today. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu.